obviously like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell icon. Whatever. All that
So,
stuff.
Yay!
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2021 KeyKulture podcast. This is our first episode from the new year. And as always, you have the two amazing hosts, me, Matei, Gheorghiu, and
Niilo Tarnanen. Hello, everyone.
hi, Niilo. And today we have Anna Jaskiewicz, who is second manager in Tapiola Sinfonietta. And we've wanted very much to bring also someone who is from the organizatoric part of an orchestra to talk about the internal affairs, the logistics, the financial parts of the internal workings of an orchestra as well. Hello to you, Anna.
Nice to be here, and thank you for asking.
All right, so let's get right into it. And I'll start with the first question. So, what does an orchestra manager actually do? If there is such a thing as an ordinary work day or work week for you as an orchestra manager, and how would it be, without taking in consideration the pandemic?
Yes. Well, that's a very good question. Sometimes I wonder after a week, what did I do and what actually happened? But if somebody looks at me from the outside, they're thinking, oh, she's a lot on the computer, she's a lot on the phone, and she's typing a lot. So mostly it's working at the office or from home, and I contact the agents, I contact the guest artists and the conductors and soloists. I do the HR work because I am the boss of the 43 musicians. So there's a lot of day-to-day activities that just are in the email or on the phone.
HR is human resources, right?
Human resources, yes. So we have 43 musicians, and then we have the administrative staff of at the moment 7. So that's what we are doing there. But yeah, the week is usually Monday. We have musicians are out of the building. They are working, playing from home, doing the home practicing. And then Tuesday we usually start the practice on stage, and then Friday we have a concert in the evening. So that's the kind of basic week, and yeah, that's the normal times week.
But is it how is it for you, like as a office person? Like, do you have to change your working days according to how the concerts are throughout the week, or is it like a very stable work that is, I don't know, from 8 to 4 or 9 to 5?
Yeah, on a regular week, 8 to 4, yeah, something like that, 8:30 to 4:30, something like that. But of course, when there's a concert, then usually we almost everybody from the administrative staff is also present, or at least the producer who is producing that week's concert. And with us, the orchestra manager, the second manager, does also producing of the seasonal concerts. So usually I'm also always there when there's a concert. But during the rehearsal times, many times there's some questions or something that needs to be handled during the break time. So usually I'm at the office close by, or sometimes even in the hall a little bit. So yeah, it all goes kind of like when the musicians are there, then usually I am there as well.
Anna, you referred to the producing. So could you perhaps elaborate a bit to the audience? What does a producer do in a context of a classical music concert?
Yes, it's pretty much everything that you can just imagine around the production. Well, the season concerts in an orchestra are a bit different than any kind of other production in the classical music world. But kind of like the season concerts are usually following the same formula or module. You do a contract with the artists that are coming, and in our case, it's the conductor and the soloist. Then you have all this correspondence with their agents about whatever if they're coming from abroad, about the flights, when is he coming to the country, and where is he staying, and or she. And then it's the production point from the orchestra point of view, like who is there on stage, whose turn is it to have a week off this week, is somebody sick, do we need somebody to substitute them. And the season concerts are usually with our regular strength of musicians, but of course then we have two concert masters, which one is that week working, all these kind of details that happen with it. Then with the production, there's also the matter of what the whole technicians and staff are doing. So we have to tell them what's happening. Usually the season concerts are all produced by me, and then if we have anything else, kind of like audience outreach or outside our hall concert somewhere else, or visiting abroad or visiting somewhere in Finland, usually those are done by our producer, and there's a lot of them too. But yeah, the season concerts are with me, and then I run the show, so to say, from background, so that the goal is that when audience comes in, everything is perfect, and even if something would have happened, they wouldn't know anything. That's the goal of the producer.
So basically you're the one who takes care that everybody is and everything is at the stage when it needs to be, and
Yes.
out of the stage when they need to be.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not as easy as it sounds.
Yes, that's true. Somehow you guys know it too.
Yeah, I assume you said that somehow we know because maybe we can tell the audience that both me and Niilo did work as konserttivahtimestarit. This is like what in English? Concert
Janitors.
No.
I don't know.
Doorman. Maybe doorman is better than janitor.
Doorman, yeah, okay. So
well,
yeah. All right. But in that case, maybe we go to the next question, right?
Of course, one of the things that happen in the administration, but it's not that visible to, for example, the orchestral musicians, and not in the same way visible to composers like us either, is of course the money. So could you explain to us and our viewers, where does the money of an orchestra, for example, of Tapiola Sinfonietta, come from? What are the sources? Is it primarily state money, private money from the city, from the tickets, or how does it split up?
Yes, good question. We are a city orchestra. Sometimes even the people in Espoo don't realize it because our name is Tapiola Sinfonietta. So we are not only in Tapiola, we are the city orchestra of Espoo city. So most of our funding, of course, naturally comes from the tax money and the Espoo people and Espoo city. Then, of course, we have the part of that government pays. So this subsidies from the government, which is about quarter of our budget. So it depends on how many musicians there are in an orchestra, how much money comes to the orchestra. So that's about a quarter. And then I think our ticket prices are only like it's just a fraction of our yearly budget. But yes, it's a good, of course, it's very much needed. So most of it is the city of Espoo, and then the government, and then a little bit from the tickets.
Because I talked once with an orchestra manager some years ago in Kuopio, and he told me that it's around that. I think at that point it was around 50% came from the kaupunki, from the city, and then around the half of the rest, so 25% was more or less from the state, and the other 25 was from whatever the orchestra can produce, like tickets or selling CDs or concert programs. Is that about accurate?
Ours would be, I would say that what we get from outside is only about a little bit less than 10%. So the city would be then, if it's 25 and 10, the city is about 65% of our budget. Yes.
So 10% would be what the orchestra produces on its own, right?
Yes, yes.
So then, because I remember I had this interesting discussion. Interesting in the sense of how it made me feel, because I was very outraged when I heard this. But I was talking to someone who was saying that, we should, the city, the money from the city is still the money from the state in the end. So the money that is public, it's so much. Maybe orchestras should just have tickets that cost 100 euros or 150 euros, and then you don't have to finance 50 orchestras. You can have 3 orchestras in the whole country, and it should work like a business. So what you're saying to me is that if Tapiola would be a business, it would only make out 10% of its spending, or
Yeah, the ticket prices would need to be a lot higher. So naturally, it's not cheap, but when you think of it, most of it is the salaries of the musicians and the visitors, the conductors and soloists, and the administrative staff. So that's pretty much the biggest chunk of the whole budget. And when you think of the whole situation, what it brings to the people, I would say that this well-being that an orchestra in a city can bring to the residents of the city cannot be measured in any money. And we have realized this, of course, during this year, also how much it impacts people's lives and how much they yearn to be there live in the hall, listening to the music. And sometimes we don't
somewhere
even.
near their neighborhood, probably.
Yes,
So
yes.
not far away, but that is really a local place that you can feel your own.
Yes, and you have like your own kind of group of friends, not even friends, but group of people that you meet every week in an orchestra concert. The kind of situation that you cannot measure in anything. You don't even, nobody can tell. Like we didn't even know what kind of audience we have and how they are so connected to each other. Like we had this kind of research with the Aalto University about what should we do in the future to make it even better for our audience. And then we discovered that they have this kind of subculture in there. They're not friends outside the orchestra concert, but on Fridays when they meet, if somebody's not there that they are used to seeing there, the season pass holders, they're like, where is she? Where is he? And what has happened? And then they ask around until somebody knows, okay, that person is today went to the countryside or something. And they kind of have very close connection, and this kind of relationship with other people around you is something to be cherished and something to be, you cannot create it anywhere else.
It's a social event.
Yes.
Yeah. But can I ask now, so just some numbers, if hopefully it's not too difficult for you. I don't know if you got prepared for this or not, but let's say a concert ticket now in Tapiola is around what? Like
a little bit less than 30 euros.
A bit less than 30 euros. Okay. Yeah. And on average, you have per concert how many people?
Before the COVID times, we had like our biggest amount of season pass holders. We got 760 something, 62 or something, and our whole seat 766. Of course, we have different series, so not everybody, all the season pass holders are in the same concert. But let's say we had about 86% of the audience usually filled in every concert. So it's a lot of people.
Okay, so in order to, let's say, keep that, let's say that everybody comes to the concert, the hall is packed every week, you would have to sell the tickets with, so not 30 euros, you would have to sell them with how much, so that, orchestra would be self organized, like a private business. It has to be like 10 times more, or
10 times. So it would be almost like 250 euros or something.
300, yeah. Okay.
250 to 300 euros, yes. And but every seat sold.
Yeah, and in that case, people stop coming to the concert because they think it's like way too expensive.
At least not every week, because I think quite a few of us would have that much money to go like have more than 1,000 euros for concerts every month. So I think the way that the orchestras are funded in Finland is really good from the point of population equality. I mean that not only those who are really rich, but also those who have kind of normal salaries can go to the concerts regularly.
Yes, exactly. And even 30 euros for somebody is a lot of money per
Yes,
week.
yes.
So
Yeah, but I guess you have some kind of reduced ticket fees for those who, for example, are students or unemployed or something like that.
yes, we have for students, for the seniors, and for the unemployed. Yes.
Do you know how it's in other countries? Maybe you don't know the whole world, but do usually orchestras get similar financing like in Finland? Part from the city, part from the state, part from ticket sales. Is it more or less the same everywhere, or?
I don't think so. I think we are pretty unique in this system. There are a lot of like for instance in USA, most of them are privately funded or have some kind of association behind them. And as we know now, they have big problems because it's all based on if somebody is donating the money. I think Europe is a little bit easier on that side, and for sure there are city orchestras also like us. But even so, I think this kind of government money that we get is pretty rare. So
An orchestra in Germany, for example, would be founded differently than an orchestra in Finland. Do you?
I would think so, but I think there's also city orchestras there, and then they of course have the opera orchestras that are different. So it depends on what field you are in.
How are operas different?
Because their budget is so huge, so they're always usually subsidized with some government money.
And then
For sure.
also, if we think it from the productional point, an opera production is typically repeated really many times, whereas an orchestra concert is maybe played twice with the exactly same program. So
Yeah.
it's in many productional senses, it's a different world. Actually, now this brought maybe the next follow-up question. I mean, is there any link between the orchestra funding and then the choice of the program? I mean, is it a thing that, for example, the managers and the conductors discuss kind of with what kind of programs would you get enough audience to to have more funding, or is it something that you don't have to think about in a system like the Finnish one?
At least in Tapiola, at the moment, well, of course, we are a city orchestra, so we need to provide for all the residents of Espoo, so from the old to the young. So there has to be something for everyone. But our main thing, the season concerts, they are exactly how the artistic board and the general manager and the visiting artist created. So so there a little bit there is like with the audience outreach, which we are doing a lot. Tapiola is very exceptional in that, and we are very proud of it. And the city is very proud of it too, that we are going to the hospitals, we're going to the senior homes, we're going to schools and other places to take the music to where the people are. And we are also doing this kind of godchild program, and which we started from the womb. So they were already the babies in their mother's wombs were coming to the concert, which is a bit exceptional. But this is something that nobody pressured us to do. It's something that we have just started to do, and in of course in the Espoo story, it's part of the thing that we walk along our residents and we bring the well-being not only to the people who come to the concert hall, but also to the people who, like, we want to touch all lives of the Espoo residents from the beginning to the end. So that's some part that we have wanted to do, and many other orchestras do it as well, but it's not as easy as it sounds. We just have a very committed group of musicians who want to do also that. So
how
yes,
much?
partly yes, but not aggressively no.
So so in the context of the kind of normal concerts, you can go with the artistic grain, so to say, of the conductors
Yes.
and the soloists. How about outreach projects that you mentioned? How much does Tapiola Sinfonietta do these things? Do you go every week somewhere, or every second week, or how does it go?
We have 4 days per musician, like all the musicians are doing that much. And the 4 days are usually 6-hour days, so it can be one project that you do many days, or it can be 4 different projects that you do one each day. And then we also have one community musician, Pasi Pihlaja, our horn player, who's doing it as his full job. So he's a 50% musician who does all his work is this audience outreach. So that's quite a many days. So when you have 43 musicians or the 42 musicians doing 4 days each, and then Pasi who does it the whole time.
So you can quite easily actually make up chamber music ensembles that fit to the special needs of every kind of situation. Like perhaps an elderly house will need a bit different kind of ensemble and setting than, for example, some other kind of some kindergarten orchestra.
Yeah, we've had many times. Somehow it's been quartets going to the daycares. I don't know why, but just somehow there has been usually quartets going. And then to the hospital, we have had single musicians going, like musicians alone. For instance, if you have the what do you call saattohoito in English? The terminally ill patients. Usually, you don't want to have a big group. There is maybe a cello player alone or a violinist alone playing music there. And there's if you go to the children's hospital, then there might be one musician alone, or there might be two. So it all depends on what the musicians want to do also. So it's they come up with the idea, they give it to our producer, and then our producer makes the appointments or the times for them to go. So, and then also they might suggest themselves that I want to go to this and this daycare or something like that. So it's very flexible in that sense.
Interesting. So that there is really a kind of bottom-up approach there.
Yeah.
Cool.
So a bit going back to what Niilo asked with the way you choose programs. So I would assume that if an orchestra is financed properly, then of course you have some kind of freedom to choose the programs that you deem are good for the public. But if you are a private orchestra, well, it would be interesting to talk to someone from a private orchestra to see exactly how they finance themselves, because for me it's a pretty mystery, because I don't suspect they sell their tickets with 300 euros. But in the same time, I'm assuming that an orchestra that is private and relies on having people coming to the concert, it cannot play contemporary music or, stuff that is like, repertoire that is less known. So then you start making more populist programs. You put some Star Wars concert and some, I don't know, movie music and so on. Is that what happens to private orchestras?
I don't know. I think maybe partly it would, but then again, I think this kind of program would be something that any orchestra would want to do anyways, a little bit, not all the time. But that's very interesting question, because I'm thinking that yeah, of course you have to find your audience. You have to find the people who want to come and see you guys playing. And if you all the time changes into something that what you think the audience wants, I don't think that will work in the long run. So in the long run, I think you have to have a combination of something that brings the money in, but also something that they can rely on, because if it changes constantly, that doesn't work either.
Yes, of course. If we would need some empirical data about you could just go and see the old program leaflets of let's say some of the big London orchestras that are private institutions. Then again, I'm thinking that actually really many of the Finnish orchestras, for example, Tapiola Sinfonietta, or in Helsinki, the Finnish Radio Symphony Orchestra, or the Helsinki Philharmonics, they actually almost always, like if we think the before COVID times, sell the hall full quite often, even if, and in the late kind of in recent years, it has been mostly that even if the program is quite challenging actually aesthetically, or actually maybe even because of that. So I wouldn't be that sure that it's a necessity to be very populistic to get the house full. But of course, this is probably something that has been easier to experiment and find out in a positive way in a system like the Finnish orchestra world, where you can take risks, in contrast to somewhere where you really have to be careful and think.
I can tell you from discussions I had with various people from Romania, where I come from, that they do think a lot about these things, that if we're going to put some modern symphony, no one's going to want to listen, so then we don't put it. But we could put some 5 minutes piece at the beginning, or 10 minutes, to kind of like put it together with the Mendelssohn Concerto and the Brahms Symphony. So people do think like that, but I think it also has to do a lot with the public that you have. And
yeah, it's interesting how when Niilo said about that they are full. I have the same feeling. Like our audience was saying that we don't necessarily even look at the season. What's gonna come up? We trust that it's gonna be good. So we come on Friday anyways. It's our tradition. We don't really care what's in there because we know it's gonna be good. But
right.
then that what you were saying, yes, they do realize, okay, if there's only contemporary music, only modern music, they're like, oh, they might be intrigued of changing their tickets because they have one ticket per, I think, per year that they can change into something else if they wish to have from the other season series. So many times it is the one if there's a lot of contemporary music. But then the idea of putting something to kind of like tickle their minds, it's a good thing to do this kind of like, just even if it's very traditional other part of the program, to have something that opens up. Sometimes people have been saying, oh, I didn't know that it could be this good, or I didn't know it could be something like that. So I think it's our duty to tickle the brains and to kind of little by little push it there, to have something that they can look at it in a different way and have a different perspective to the modern music.
This is actually quite interesting to hear, because as a composer, and also as a kind of anyway more widely a professional of music, I don't I don't have this kind of insight to the, like, how do those who with seasonal tickets think about, because I always watch, okay, what's the concert, what's the program, and only if it's really interesting to me I go there. And of course I go there for the new things that I haven't ever heard before. But it's interesting that for some other, and perhaps it's more typical to the audience, that they first take, this is my normal orchestra, my normal time of concert, and I will just go there and then be, okay, what is the music?
Yeah, I think the brain of an audience member works very differently than the brain of a musician, simply because, yeah, for them it's also the social event, and this is my time of the week for the orchestra after my work, whereas our work does involve music anyway all the time, so we want to use it, let's say, wisely.
Perhaps on the other hand, I wouldn't downplay the importance of the social aspect even here. But okay, maybe it's time to maybe go forward in our discussion. I started really much thinking about the COVID and various safety measures that are probably needed at this time, especially when you describe these outreach projects, Anna. I mean, I have watched quite regularly some streamings from orchestras, and it seems to be that orchestras can do quite well streamings without the audience, even kind of at the tough times like now when almost everything's forbidden. But how about the outreach projects? I think that those might be really hard to do at
Yes,
the times of the pandemic.
just before, well, first of all, in spring, in last March, April and May, they were completely nothing like that. We did some streaming with our community musician, and he did some instrument presentation videos, and then we had one video with the library with our quartet, and they had somebody telling a story to the kids, and then the music was combined in between. So, and that got a lot of hits because there was nothing, everything was closed, the museums were closed, the libraries were closed. So that was really like, you could see that the parents were yearning to get something for their kids when they were home. Then in the fall, we started a little bit. There was a couple of Espoo Day, I remember we had some outside performances of audience outreach. That was the end of August. And then again, I think it was somewhere in October that everything was closed down again. And especially this was hard for our community musician who does it like, that's his main job. So of course we came up with maybe he can study a little bit more of something, take some courses online, and then do these videos. And but the yearn of going somewhere, it's huge, and actually playing. Now he was able to start again with the libraries a little bit, but this is all, of course, because he is an Espoo city employee, and it's an Espoo City Library, so we can do that. But for instance, the kind of regular audience outreach that also other people than Tapiola Sinfonietta does, it's not possible. We can't get into the senior homes, we can't go to the hospitals now. And it's a huge demand that there would be in these times to get some music or some art in front of you. So yeah, it's a big challenge. We doing, of course, you can do some amount of social media videos to Instagram or Facebook, but it's never the same. And especially for older people, it's never the same. I was at some point thinking that should we just then start calling our audience member and hello, how you doing? Just have like a daily call or something, but it's not that easy to organize either.
Of course.
But if nothing else, maybe at least something like that, or maybe play through the phone something, because older people might not have a very good computer with a very good speaker system, so the quality is never going to be the same than in live music. But yeah, like it's a struggle now, but we have to come up with creative ways. We did have with the daycare that the quartet was playing inside the daycare, and the kids were looking from the window, and then there were speakers outside. So these kind of creative solutions you can do, but nothing beats the real thing.
How has your work as a manager changed since the pandemic? You explained in the beginning how it's the normal work for an orchestra manager without taking the pandemic into consideration. How has it been ever since? Has it been very different for you?
Yes, I would say I thought I was busy before. I didn't know anything. Now we're busy. It's like, I would say there's like 3 times more planning in a way. Normally you would plan the normal times. This is the season, what it's going to be like. And then you go through it, and you go through the regular yearly, whatever happens at this point of the year. Now you have to have the regular. Then you have all kinds of cancellations and what if plans. And then you have the what if plan. So you have to kind of like have simultaneously all the time preparing for everything and even beyond that. So all the time we're going, what if this happens, then you should do this and that. And what if that happens, do we change the program, or do we change the conductor, or what do we do? And then we apply for special permits for the people to arrive in the country, not knowing if the rules are anyways going to change and they cannot come after all. So I would say that for the administrative staff, it's triple the amount of work compared to the regular times. And then at the same time, you also have to report what happened, what was the plan, and what was the actual outcome. So yes, lots of work, but also flexibility.
Yeah, I can imagine that in a situation where the plans have changed like 2 or 3 times, and then you have to explain what it has to do with the original plan, that might be really frustrating.
Yes. But at the same time, what I have to say, what is a good outcome from this is never did I think that we could change plans like this. Because usually when you do this kind of työlista, this work schedule for the musicians for half a year, that's it. Nothing's changing. That's it. And it couldn't change. Or if one thing, little thing changes, it was like, why is this happening? Now it's kind of like, oh, nobody cares if something changes. They're like, okay, fine. And this kind of attitude and this kind of flexibility was never in the orchestras before. It's like, we're a lot more kind of agile and jumping into something else.
So that's in a way a good thing.
Yes. So there are good things about it too.
That's interesting. I think this reminds a bit about like perhaps me and Matei's experience about teaching. Like at normal times, like for example, online teaching is something that we would just like, really, do we have to even think about that? But then suddenly when the pandemic came, it was like, well, we have to do something. And then we just adapt it to something. So it's actually really interesting to see if these kind of culture changes in the adaptability and in the agility remain after the pandemic, or is it just that now temporarily we are really alert and ready to do whatever keeps us alive, and then afterwards we are so tired and dead that we just want everything to be planned and fixed for 2 years in advance?
I don't think so. I think we are ready now for this change to be a bit more flexible and kind of like how would I put it? Like I would never ever have imagined that in 1 week after this kind of this decision came from the AVI, from the regional authorities, that nothing is going to happen now. 2 months closed. Like what? And then in 1 week we were able to start streaming. So we started doing twice a week chamber music streamings, and who would have thought? Because we had never streamed anything. And I remember saying that somebody was asking, like, why can't you do it? Oh, because we don't have the equipment in the hall, and it should be, this and that, and we don't have the technicians for it, this, that. And then all of a sudden, when everything else from the other halls were canceled and we were the only one there, then the technicians were saying, oh, we have this camera there, that camera. Then in 1 week, they had the equipment from all the halls combined into one, and they started streaming with us. And this never, ever would have happened if I would have asked, hey, can we do streaming next week? No. Maybe next year, or maybe in 2 years.
But so maybe that's in a way has to do also with the fact that since the pandemic is here, you just try stuff around and you're not going to be, it's a bit harder to fail, let's say. I mean, nobody expects you to do everything perfect.
Yes.
So then everybody's more relaxed about trying out things that, maybe doesn't work. So when you say, hey, let's use that camera, or let's start streaming in a normal time, people would say, well, this is more work, but it's also more responsibility. Let's not do it. But now it's like, okay, maybe it's not so much responsibility because we just try out and let's see what happens. And if it's good, great. If it's not, too bad.
Exactly.
We might get back to normal after the pandemic. But I wanted to.
Or are you about to ask?
No, I wanted to acknowledge that what you're saying is also sounds also like the office people have 3 times more work compared to, let's say, the conductors who have 3 times less work, and probably even orchestra musicians, because I don't imagine they work more than they normally do.
Well, ours a little bit, I would say. They are prepared to do something, then all of a sudden this is changed and it's something else, and then they do the bowings again, then they start rehearsing. So I'm not saying that it would be any easier for them. In some parts, yes, but many times, especially when there's program changes, it creates for everybody in the organization more to do.
Oh, yeah, and this was actually, I had a follow-up question that I forgot, but now I remembered it. So when you do this like if plans and if plans and if plans, you're gonna have to start talking to very many people with whom you might have concerts, and some get canceled, some happen, some don't happen. Does that mean that now you have, let's say, do you try to reschedule most of these things, or you just ask now and then if it doesn't work, forget it? Because I would imagine that if you take all these plans into consideration, then the next 4 or 5 years are fixed already from so
Not
many
quite.
people.
Not quite. We actually have been very fortunate that we've been able to do now in the fall pretty much what we had planned. In the spring, when it was a total lockdown, then we moved some of them, but they had to be moved 2 years ahead because the next season was already planned. So some of the stuff, couple of concerts, we moved ahead. But now in the fall, and now I have to knock on wood, because we have been able to do pretty much exactly the program we were supposed to do. We are an orchestra under 50 musicians, and 50 is the limit what you can have in the same place. So we were very fortunate. We didn't have to start completely moving everything around. Only a very few things that when there were a couple of people over 50, we had to think, okay, we have to have less, we have to have more space in between the musicians. We have to cut down because our stage doesn't hold more than that. And so only a few things we have changed, and maybe one piece of music this spring we cannot do because it was scheduled to be premiered in the fall somewhere else, and they haven't done it yet, so we can't do it now. So we have to switch maybe one piece because of that. But most of the time we've been able to continue as it is, and we just stream that program. And we've been fortunate that the city of Espoo has been giving us the chance to meet as an orchestra as the full strength and to do these concerts even without the audience. So at the moment, and for this season, for us it's been pretty much business as usual when it comes to that, but just without the audience.
So is it so that because now the pandemic has been going on so long time, there haven't been so many panic reactions as 1 year ago when it all started, but instead it's kind of you have been able to plan this 2021 season so that you don't have to have that many B plans and C plans, or
Yeah.
at least up to this point.
Mostly it's been about, are we able to bring our artists to Finland? Because Tapiola Sinfonietta is in that also a little bit different orchestra. Almost all of our conductors and soloists are coming from somewhere else. So that's been the biggest thing. What if they cannot come? Who can we invite, and do we then have to change the program? So that's been the our artistic board's biggest weekly issue. Like, are they able to come, or how are they able to come early enough for the quarantine? That's the main issues we are dealing about. And then they have other commitments. If that other commitment is not cancelled, then they cannot come early enough here. But if it is cancelled, then we wait. And then how long do we wait? So that's kind of our daily business so far.
So how have you tackled it? Have you had kind of some B plan conductors or soloists that can then take it up if the first choice cancels, or is this
Yes.
too confidential?
Well, we've had there was one actually for this week we were thinking, because he's from Austria, Roland Kultig, and we were thinking, okay, what if the rules are now tightened? But he was able to come one day before the rules tightened, and so we didn't have to worry about it. That is he able? So when we knew, okay, he's in the country, everything is fine. But we had talked about what if he cannot? What if he doesn't? What if they don't let him in? And then we had another one. Oh, maybe this guy could come, but he was also from a country that the rules were tightened, and it was like, okay, well then how about this and this guy from Finland? Is he in Finland? Is he what is he doing? So yeah, we went through a lot of scenarios in this, and of course at the same time for this week, this especially this week was because it's Musica Nova. We were thinking that what happens to the festival, like what is the whole thing about the festival, and then but they were asking what is happening with you. So mostly it was like if we want to go ahead and stream, the festival is happy about that. So it was everybody was kind of like feeling what the other one is doing. But this is a happy week in that sense that we are able to stream, and we were able to have the conductor coming in, and other orchestras also are able to stream some of the concerts. So happy for the Musica Nova. Yes.
That's good. So just to the audience to point out that Musica Nova Helsinki is one of the most important Finnish contemporary music festivals that happens every second year around in the beginning of February. What kind of measures has the orchestra taken? We have already talked about the streaming and the B plans and so on, but how then if we think about what happens practically on the stage and perhaps backstage? So do the safety distances cause a lot of extra work for your administration?
Yes, the biggest thing was when we decided that everybody's going to have their own music stand. So of course, then that means that the strings, there's everybody has their own stand. Everybody's changing their own pages, and also you have to prepare more scores for people. So for the library, it was right away more bowings writing, because they write them actually by hand to each and every score, and also getting more scores from the publishers, because usually you get the set for so that you have two looking at one. So of course the publishers also have this kind of more work to do in that. Then at first we are thinking, okay, we have to be in between 1 and 2 meters, so between 1 and 2 meter distances. So we had about, I think, between 1.3 and 1.8, depending on the way you were sitting on stage. Then that created, of course, the problem of that. How do the musicians hear themselves on stage? And we had 1 week actually in August where we were just, trying out what is the best kind of scenario, how to be on the stage. And we had Eero Lehtimäki with us actually, who's been doing acoustics also, or studying acoustics. So we were thinking that he's maybe the best choice to do that with us, and he was. So we actually usually, we are a different orchestra in this also. Usually we have our first violins on the left of the conductor and the second violins on the right of the conductor, and then the celli are here next to the first violins, and the violas next to the second violins. So then we were thinking that, okay, the balance is not quite as well. It was actually the acoustics of the hall became a little bit better because they were spread out, and the wooden sides of the stage was giving a little bit more to the acoustics. But the second violins were so spread, and that it created a bit unbalance between the first and second violins, because from the first violins it was coming to the audience, but from the second violins going away. So then we switched, and that was the result of that week. So we switched the second violins to the left, where the first violins usually are from the conductor, and the first violins to the right, where the second violins usually are. So of course this was for the conductors also like, what? Where's the concertmaster? Oh, here. And so and for everybody it was of course a change. Some were saying that a good thing about getting your own stand was that you can look straight, so you're not looking left or right. So for the ergonomic point of view, having your own stand is better. Then switching the concertmaster somewhere else is kind of like, what? I've always been looking to a different direction, so it was an adjustment. Then for the backstage, we had to have right away. We had a lot more these kind of stations to disinfect your hands. We said that we avoid the other hall, like when there's something going on, especially if there's a big production going on, we cannot mix the two halls. So we keep some doors closed, and we only can walk from certain corridors. Then we closed right away down the audience coming into the backstage, because that's been something that has happened somehow in Tapiola. Not anymore in Helsinki Music Center, but in Tapiola, it's been very common that people come and greet and say hello to the conductor and the soloist, and all kinds of people coming to the backstage. Well, that was a no-no after that. So nobody can come to the backstage except the people who are working. Then when the rules tightened that everybody in October, everybody has to use a mask now everywhere around the staff areas also. Then it was still okay that in the hall, in the stage, you can play without the mask. But then little by little it tightened, and now everybody uses a mask even when playing, except for the winds, of course. Not easy for them. That's not going to happen. But everywhere outside the stage, you have to use a mask. And of course, now the building is closed, and there is the Music Institute people use their own entrance, the library people use their own entrance, and we use only one entrance, and nobody goes in the lobby. So lots of changes in that sense. And with the audience, when we could have audience, we were selling only about 27% of our tickets. We had 3 empty chairs in between people. So, and this was due to the fact that we were thinking, okay, let's start with the tightest. So every 4th seat is sold. And then if it gets better, we can sell the middle seat. So get twice as many people, which never happened. And now we don't even have the audience. But with the audience, we also had, and it went very successfully, that we gave that the first rows from the and closest to the orchestra, those rows had to arrive 6:35, then 6:40, then 6:45. So we had people coming different doors and different times, and then also they were leaving the hall from the uppermost row and so on and so forth. So that to make sure that there's like as much or as less interaction between people as possible, and no intermission. We had to we shortened the some of the programs, so it would be maximum 75 minutes, and then no intermission, and the cafeteria wasn't open, and so on and so forth. These kind of safety measures we were doing, and if we open the hall now, at some point it's going to be the same thing. So lots of changes, yes.
So like if you say that you were selling to 25 to 27% of the people the tickets when you did have the audience, that does mean that 10% from which the budget was made has become even less.
Yes.
So can you tell us a bit about that? How has this pandemic impacted the orchestra financially?
Last year and this year are not too bad because the government was giving extra, you could apply for extra money to cover for the costs that you lost. So we've been fortunate enough to get some extra funding. And so we've been able to do these streamings and without any fee. So that we've been doing free streamings. If this would continue, and let's hope it doesn't, but if it would continue, then I don't know what would happen. But at the moment, Espoo City has been very, very confident and very proud that they want this to be able to continue now. And there hasn't been any cutbacks or any, what do you call, lomautus. So nothing like that has happened to our orchestra. So we've been able to work as we are employed, so as an orchestra.
Do you know about other orchestras? Have they had a less fortunate, at least in Finland, some of other orchestras have had a less fortunate situation?
Yes, there has been that they have completely nothing happening. So these kind of lomautus. So what do you call them?
Forced holiday, or like.
No, like kind of forced, like that you're not getting paid, but you can get unemployment money instead for laid off. Yes. So I know that there's been in some orchestras, not very long ones, so not like many months, a couple of weeks or even some other times, and then in some orchestras they might have needed to do some other work. So this has happened, yes. And of course, when you think of the National Opera, that's maybe the worst case because they have absolutely nothing going on for some time, so no shows. So yes, it has impacted many orchestras, and I know that there have been talks about in some smaller cities about should the orchestra be completely wiped out, and that's alarming. And I really hope that this kind of situation of the COVID is not giving any kind of
Extra
look back to
reasons
that.
for that
Yes,
to happen. Yeah.
yes.
Well, however, I think since we are heading to the end part of our show, I would be interested to asking, how did you become an orchestra manager? How did
Yes.
you become, and maybe I don't know if it's a typical story, or if you know something more broadly about how do people become into these positions?
Because
I think there's
sorry, just a small point, because it's easy to ask a musician. They're going to tell you about their dreams and about how they like to play violin since they were 5, and
Yeah.
but we don't know much about these people who are behind the curtain, like you. So we would like to know more about that.
Yeah. I have to say that I don't think there's any one path. So all the people I know have different kind of backgrounds. My background is that I was studying industrial engineering and management at the University of Technology in Tampere. And then I got into the Savonlinna opera choir as a singer, and my friends were saying, should you learn how to sing? And I'm like, I don't know. And then then I went to music. Of course, I had been singing all along. I had been going to the music institute and playing piano. Yeah. But yeah, but then I did my master's actually in opera singing. So I kind of like had the way of the engineering mind. My brain is kind of like in two. So the engineering mind, and then there's the musician's mind. And then I started producing opera at the Sibelius Academy. That was my first ever like real job. And after that, I was asked to be the manager of the Sibelius Academy Symphony Orchestra when just before the Helsinki Music Center was built. So I took the orchestra there, and then from there on, it kind of like, I don't know, I drifted into the to the backstage, so to say, and then the orchestra kind of started feeling like, yeah, this is I've always been about organizing and getting things in order and planning, and then still having the music next to it. So I'm kind of like my own life arts manager, education person. So I just drifted from the opera then to the orchestra and then to Tapiola.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's my background.
Do you think that you have benefited from the engineering studies in terms of how to organize stuff?
Yes, because I was doing actually, it was there was also the money side of it. So because I was doing industrial engineering economics, so the economic side, and then I was doing safety engineering. So with the opera especially, it was good to have that background. And then as a singer and as a person who's been in these kind of productions and been, it was easy then to drift towards the orchestra. Of course, as a singer and a pianist, I'm not the first one to know what a life of a violinist is. But then again, there's so many different instruments, and they all have their own different kinds of aspects. Then I have to say that the time with the Sibelius Academy Orchestra was the biggest educator in that, because I got to know from the start from the students what are the obstacles they're facing. So that taught me a lot. There was about 270 people in the roster of the orchestra, so I heard a lot of uh, lot of interesting things from the students, and that helped a lot.
Right, great. Now let's ask a bit about more of the internal affairs of an orchestra. So I would expect not all orchestra managers have a music background, but I do expect that many of them do. Like I guess it's hard to ask something like how many of them do have, but I would assume that they do have some voice to say in how the artistic decisions are made, regardless of not they are musicians. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a bit about this process? How do artistic decisions are made? Who decides the repertoire? What is played every week, and what pieces get played, and who's playing?
Yeah, this is actually interesting also where Tapiola is again a bit different from, from everybody else. Usually it's the general manager and the artistic director or the chief conductor who are the team and make the decisions and what's happening in the orchestra the very season. But in our case, as the musicians are actually the ones who founded the orchestra, so it's very much musician driven. So they actually have this artistic board, which consists of 2 musicians and the general manager. And they make the day-to-day decisions and plan the program. Then we have an advisory program committee that consists of even more musicians, and I'm also there. And then we have the concert masters and so on and so forth. And they do the more kind of long distance planning and then what's the kind of where the ship should sail into what direction. But yeah, this artistic board that we have is very unique, and I have to say that that's maybe one of the best ways of doing it, because we don't have that one chief conductor. We have artistic partners, usually 1 or 2. Now at the moment we have Klaus Mäkelä and Marci Nyman. Then we have usually a resident artist, which is different each year. And next, our artistic partner is going to be next fall. It's going to be Ryan Bancroft. So of course it also depends on who is the partner at the moment. So what kind of things we do, and that shapes us. But yeah, the like kind of day-to-day control is with this board of 3 members. And when it's an uneven number, it's good. There's 2 musicians, the general manager, and if there's uneven vote, then the 2 out of 3, make the decision in a way. So I would say it's very democratic. And usually there's always one of them is a string player and one of them is a wind player. So the kind of different aspects of the orchestra come into that equation. So what I've seen, it seems to be working very well when there's this kind of musician involvement.
So is there rotation like between who is in the artistic board
Yes.
of just 3 persons?
So
it's
two,
not always
2 years
the same
musicians.
but,
Yeah.
So kind of each musician of the orchestra gets there in some point of their career, maybe if they are long enough in that orchestra.
If they're interested, and then it's always voted. So first you have to be interested, and then somebody has to vote for you.
Okay, so it's even in this sense, it's really an electoral democracy inside of the orchestra. Interesting.
As a follow-up question, you said a couple of terms. General manager, so that's you're like second manager. So let's say the person who's like doing the same as you but higher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then you said artistic director. Then you said chief conductor. What's the difference between who's the artistic director?
We don't have, actually, that's what I said, that we don't have the chief conductor or the artistic director. So our artistic director is the committee.
Right.
And then we don't have the chief conductor. We have the partners that are usually 3-4 years, usually 3 years. And then, Marci has been actually probably almost 9-10 years now. And so we have had longer relationship with our artistic partners as well.
I understood that, but like in a normal orchestra, you said they are also like the manager and the artistic director and the chief conductor,
or the chief conductor or the artistic director, depending on the orchestra.
Right.
Yeah. So
right.
how they work. Yeah.
So often the chief conductor is the artistic director.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So maybe we get into the juicy stuff, Niilo.
Yes.
Do you want to go there or?
Let's go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yes, so of course, as composers, we're interested in a question which seems to be a mystery, like how do composers get their pieces in orchestral programs, especially because it seems that composers don't have any kind of own path where they could actively kind of suggest their pieces to orchestras. So it seems to be that if you get somehow famous, so then after that, every orchestra will have your piece played. But before that, how can you do? Do you have any chances? Do you have any insight on this?
Yeah, well, there is no one path. There is no like, this is the way to do it. I think the most important thing, of course, and naturally, is that the music speaks for itself. And that's the best way, of course. If you have something that you think that it's going to be great, then you just let the manager or the whoever is in artistic charge in that orchestra, you just directly contact them. We have a lot of emails coming up. And then, of course, you have to somehow stand out. And what is the thing to stand out is that you know who you are directing this to. Like, for instance, we are a chamber orchestra. We have no trombones. We have no tuba and no harp. So you have to know who you are, sending this email. So don't send a generic like, okay, symphony orchestra, Sinfonietta, blah, whatever. It has to be that something that we could do. And I can let you into one secret with the Tapiola Sinfonietta.
Yeah, we're gonna turn the recording off now.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to, or you can, whatever. Yeah. But we are very interested in something that is, especially for chamber orchestra, some kind of 20-minute, 30-minute piece that is exactly for that orchestra size. And not always with a soloist. Many times you get emails from a soloist who said that, oh, I commissioned this piece from this composer, and then I would like to go. So it's already there's somehow it's an easy package if it's a good thing coming up, and it probably you might get it easily. Maybe with an orchestra that has a chief conductor who's a lot there. But in our case, we have all these so many different conductors coming, and they have their own ideas about the repertoire and the soloists, that it's tough when there's already a package of both the soloist and the piece. So for us, it doesn't always work. Then there's also the question about if it's what's the catch, like there's some kind of interesting, like this week we have the Hammond organ is the soloist, and for Musica Nova Helsinki it's very interesting. Hammond organ, so that's something intriguing and something new, something extra. So that's part of our program this week. But then also in our interest, it is really like for our combination of instruments. That's something, if it's for us and a special length or good length, then that's something we're very interested in.
As you're talking about the length, so do I understand correctly that there are a lot of short pieces for a chamber orchestra or a sinfonietta, and then there are quite many concertos that can be played with such an ensemble, as long as you get the soloist from somewhere. But then if you get to those pieces that are kind of in the symphony category, is if you think that there's the overture and then the concerto and the symphony in a very kind of generalized way of thinking of the program, so that there are not so many of these works that would be from the present time and which would really suit to a small orchestra. So that would kind of be a niche to go.
Or even the concerto length for a chamber orchestra, that we didn't always have to have a soloist.
Yes.
So the kind of the orchestra is the soloist in that sense. So that's the kind of idea also to have. So do you always need to have the soloist, or can the orchestra be enough?
Exactly. So basically it's just about finding the niche in which there aren't yet too many pieces, and then finding who would exactly be the good orchestra to do this piece, and not just be generally waiting for an opportunity, but
also I have to say what we've been thinking, which is it's not the easiest from our point of view to start organizing, but if a composer is willing to have a piece co-commissioned with lots of orchestras that size, that like for instance Scandinavian orchestras, that would be something of interest. So somebody who's similar to us would also have it in the same season, and you could kind of co-commission it together. That's always
I'd be into that anytime.
I think any composer who doesn't have a list of 5 years of commissions ahead would be really delighted of having any kind of commission that is suggested by somebody else than themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So what would you say to, let's say, a young composer who doesn't know what to do, or because I can tell you from a composer perspective, you're always afraid that if I'm going to send messages to this conductor, they get like 200 of them. You're just one of the other 200. And then if you insist, then you can annoy them. And then if you send the email to the wrong person from the orchestra, then they're not going to send it forward. So what's the best thing to do? Or you just have to hope that someone who's going to become a famous conductor is going to be your best friend and will
No.
want to.
I think the best is if you have some kind of sample with it, so that it is a package that it's not too long email, to the point, and then it's kind of like a ready-made easy package. This is what this is, and you could listen to it a little bit with something, or you can see a little bit of it, something like that, kind of like, and give the characterize and the background story of it. Where does it, where are you coming from? That's kind of that's the most important. I think in these modern times and this kind of, you're always looking for something that touches this insights, like what is it that your music gives? What's different about it?
So you're saying that it would be good to be able to verbalize not only
Shortly.
not only what the piece is about, but also like kind of who you are and why would the audience be interested in you as a person.
Yeah.
I think that's something that at least in the Finnish music life is not something that people are not so used to. I'm not sure if that many musicians are that experienced in that either, but especially if we are talking about composers, I think most of us would be a bit embarrassed. But I guess it's just something we need to rehearse a bit.
Because your music is coming from you and your ideas and what you're feeling. So that it's good to know. I'm not saying the composer, it's not the like your life story. That's not it. But why? Where is it coming? Where is this specific piece coming from? Like what's their background story to it? And if there isn't, if it's just that, then there isn't. But if there is something that, okay, I experienced this and then started. So that's always interesting.
So it makes it kind of a starting point for somebody who probably goes through really many scores and really many recordings, and in order to grasp to something in the beginning, it's always good to have something with that tickles kind of the human side of the listener.
Just as a side question to this, are there any discussions to do this a bit differently? Have you ever heard? Because I've often thought as a composer that this is such a gray area that you don't know what you're supposed to do. You just see that some people get famous or not, but you don't understand how that goes. And, for example, when you apply for a grant, you know that this is the application day, then I'm going to wait 2 months, then I'm going to email like, this time you didn't get it. And that's the process, and there's a jury and so on. But for, let's say, sending your pieces to an orchestra, regardless of the orchestra, there is no process. So it's do you know if there have ever been discussions to do things differently? Or
well, I have to say that many times the music comes also from the conductors. So of course, the orchestra has some kind of idea, but many of like, even if we are excited about some concerto or some other piece of music, it might be that the conductor doesn't take it. So, well, first of all, it's good to have an arsenal of things, that you can offer for the conductors as an orchestra, but also as a composer straight to the conductors, because they many times they either yes or no. Even if I think that this is excellent idea, then the conductor is like, doesn't go through me, and And even if I would think that this is excellent for our orchestra, it might be that the conductor doesn't get excited. So in that sense, I would say you as a composer, you have to go through both the orchestras and the conductors and the soloist, of course, also, because if somebody's very well known and some soloist that everybody wants, then of course, if you get to commission a piece with that person, then also. So it's maybe 3 ways: orchestra, conductor, soloist.
Right.
So there's many ways to the hearts of the people who make the decisions. Well, I guess it's time to end the day. Or what do you think, Matei?
Yes, I'm gonna have to start teaching in a few minutes. So Anna, thank you very much for taking part in this episode of ours of the KeyKulture podcast. It's always valuable to find out opinions from various people involved in the music industry, let's say in the classical music industry. I hope this was very useful for many people. Niilo, thank you also for co-hosting this with me, as always. And well, that's about it. So everybody, keep tuning to KeyKulture podcast, and of course, obviously, like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell icon. Whatever. All that stuff.
Yay!
Good.
Thank you.
Have a nice week and farewell.
All right. Bye-bye.